Rescue workers are searching for survivors tonight after an earthquake struck central Myanmar so powerful that tremors were felt in neighboring Thailand and in southwestern China. In Myanmar itself, at least 144 people are known to have died, and more than 700 are injured, but the death toll is expected to rise significantly. The epicenter of the 7 magnitude quake was near the second-largest city Mandalay, more than 100 miles away in Bangkok. 100 construction workers are missing after an unfinished skyscraper collapsed in seconds. This is the scene live at that site. It's just gone 5 there. We'll have more on the rescue effort there shortly. But we start tonight with the devastation in Myanmar. Information is tightly restricted by the ruling military there. So our correspondent Caroline Hai has been working with the BBC's Burmese service and BBC Very IFI to assess what's known about the impact of the disaster. Her report contains some distressing images cowering in shock. Buddhist monks caught between collapsing buildings on the tarmac at Mandalay International Airport. You can see a plane sway from the force of the earthquake. Terrified passengers don't know what to do before they're directed to move further away from the building in Myanmar's second-largest city. There's panic on the streets. Mandalay 10 LMI from. The epicenter is home to 1.2 million people. Buildings dangerously disfigured and fallen in on themselves after the earth moved beneath them. This woman's trapped with her baby boy. Her legs are caught under rubble on the ground floor of a damaged building in the capital, Neighbouring. A painstaking effort to get her free. We don't yet know the real scale of this disaster, but hospitals have been inundated with the injured, brought in not by ambulance but in whatever transport they can find. Treated on the street in the heat because of fear of aftershocks. So many wounded, the authorities have appealed to the public to donate blood while I was doing the housework. I felt shaking. It was very strong. I was afraid that the building would collapse, and as I went outside, I was hit by a cabinet that fell on me. A high-level visit to the hospital by the internationally isolated military hunter. The needs are so great that it's made a rare appeal for outside help. We want the international community to give humanitarian aid as soon as possible. The spokesman says the damage has been indiscriminate. They watch in horror as a pagoda in Mandalay comes down. Cultural jewels along with basic infrastructure have been destroyed, and many areas have been cut off with roads, concertina, and cracked, and the power and internet down. And that's just in territory controlled by the military government. Information from rebel-held areas already reeling from recent fighting is harder to come. Hundreds of miles away in southwest China, a glimpse of the earthquake's ferocity and the fear that came with it in Yunnan province. People are fleeing when they're suddenly engulfed by water from a high-rise swimming pool, but the focus of international concern is on Myanmar regardless of religion or politics. The hope is that the help now being mobilized by the UN will be allowed to reach everyone. One man who's been helping rescue people told the BBC that many remain under the rubble screaming for help, and he sent us pictures he'd taken close to Mandalay where he said he'd seen more than 100 bodies by nightfall in one small village alone. Caroline Hawley, BBC News. Well, in Bangkok, rescue teams have been working through the night at the site of a skyscraper which was under construction when the quake struck. Nick Marsh is there for us now. Nick, well, we're deep into the night here in Bangkok. Jane, and this place still a hive of activity. You can see here over my left shoulder the sheer scale of the devastation. The task ahead of the rescue workers who are fighting desperately to try and find any sign of life buried beneath that rubble. The latest figures that we've been given is the confirmation of 6 fatalities. But more than 100 workers still unaccounted for there underneath that rubble for them. Just well around 12 hours ago or so, it was a normal Friday afternoon at work. That was, of course, until that earthquake struck 800 miles away. Applause. After. The shock it took just moments for tragedy to hit Thailand. Years of work destroyed in seconds. More than 400 people were at this construction site when it suddenly collapsed. Panic as workers ran for their lives. People nearby fled the scene. Matthew. Martin, who was working in a nearby building, saw the moment that the half-finished tower block crumbled. First, our building started shaking, and look outside. I started taking a video after maybe 30 seconds and could see the streetlights swaying. On the road, everybody stopped on the expressway. Then by the time I panned back, you could see this building had collapsed, and you could see the dust and the debris rising up in the air. So pretty surreal, dozens are still trapped in the debris. Just how many have lost their lives is still unknown amid the chaos. Shocked patients were pushed out of hospitals. Doctors and nurses tried to treat them outside, where one woman gave birth 800 miles from the epicentre in Myanmar offices. And apartments suddenly became danger zones. At first I thought my head was spinning, so I moved to see what was happening, and things started swaying even more. So I quickly ran to my kids. I told my kids, we can't stay here. We have to get out of here, so we ran down to get outside. Those who stayed inside couldn't believe what they were seeing. Rooftop pools spilled out to the roads below. I was in the office, and people started running out, and I thought for a split second, I was like, isn't it better to stay inside? Isn't it safer? So that's what I did, and then I saw the other building and started filming, and it was basically the pool overflowing and like a waterfall. Tonight, Thailand's Prime Minister visited the site of the collapsed building. It was supposed to be a new government office today, became a disaster zone. These workers have been here for hours now, battling through the debris, desperately searching for survivors. But look, you can see the scale of the task ahead of them. Just removing those metal girders weighing thousands of tons took hours in itself, just so the search could begin for survivors in earnest. That's going to be their priority now. But for the people who saw this building collapse earlier today, and for the people that are still here now, well, the feeling is a mixture of shock at what happens, but also dread at what might be found for the Thai people. It's a chilling hint of what their neighbors in Myanmar must have felt and what they must be going through right now. Nick Marsh, BBC News, Bangkok. So how do these earthquakes happen? And why was this one so strong and so devastating? Palab Go is here to explain. Palab. Jane, these images show just how powerful the earthquake. It was the most active. It's the most active seismic area in the world, and it's the most powerful. It's been for a century. So this is a very large earthquake. It's capable of causing extreme damage close to the epicentre, and it's likely to have been felt further away. The Earth's crust is made up of plates which rub up against each other. They can slip and suddenly release their energy, which is what happened on this fault line outside the city of Mandalay in Myanmar this morning. The power of an earthquake is measured by the moment magnitude scale, which goes from 1 to 10, with each whole number being 10 times more powerful than the previous, so at 7. This was a really intense shock. It was followed by a smaller aftershock of 6.4, and then several others. There are likely to be more in the coming days and weeks, but they'll be smaller and less frequent. The concern, though, is that the earthquake and the aftershocks were relatively shallow, less than 6 mi deep, which means that the impact on the populated area above was much greater. It's very shallow. The depth is being quoted as 10 kilometers. It could be less of a shallower an earthquake. The stronger the shaking that's felt at the surface, and it's the strength of the shaking that does the damage, not the magnitude of the earthquake. If it's distant or deep, it doesn't do much harm at the surface. So it has caused some quite strong shaking. The question is whether we can predict when and where these earthquakes will happen. To give an early warning, the answer, unfortunately, is no. Although we know where the plates are rubbing against each other, we can't tell in advance exactly when they'll release their energy. Jane CB. Thank you. Well, let's talk about the aid effort, because as we've heard, Myanmar's military regime has made a rare appeal for international help. One rescue team in Mandalay says it's having to dig people out of rubble with just their bare hands. Caroline Hawley is with me and has been looking into this and talked to us about where AID might come from. What happens now? Caroline, well, aid agencies are scrambling to work out how to respond. Donald Trump has offered America's help, but time is of the essence. There's a short window to save lives, and this is going to be complicated, because Myanmar is a country that's been at war since the military junta took power in a coup in 2121. It already has serious humanitarian problems. Millions of people have been displaced by recent fighting. And as you said, the military junta has taken that unusual step of asking for outside help. But in the past, they've restricted access to aid workers, and they've also restricted aid to areas where resistant groups are active. The UN says it is now mobilizing a big humanitarian effort from a logistics hub in Dubai. We'll have to wait and see what access they get. But the need is certainly acute, and that volunteer rescue worker who talked to the BBC about digging people out with their bare hands also said there was no sign of the military helping where he was, and he said, they desperately need equipment to save lives, so time is really of the essence. It's urgent now. Absolutely. All right, Caroline. Thank you, Caroline. Hi.